Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you all for joining us for today's webinar. I'm Aditya Sharma, co-founder at High Counselor and your host for today's webinar. Our guest company today is OmniSci, and we have Rachel Wang and Drew Ritter, who will be telling us all about their fantastic company. We have a lot to cover, so let's get right into it. Rachel and Drew, can you just confirm that you're hearing me fine?
Hear you great. Can you hear
Awesome.
us?
Yes, perfect. So here's the agenda. We'll start with a quick introduction on what High Counselor is. We'll then begin our interview with OmniSci. We'll first spend a little bit of time on OmniSci, where you'll learn about the company, what they do, what it's like to work there, and a lot more. We'll then talk about OmniSci open positions, especially software engineer front-end position in San Francisco office, and job positions requirements. This will also take a good portion of today's webinar, but it should give you a good idea on what OmniSci is looking for and give you some insider tips on how to increase your chances for landing a job.
Yeah.
At any point during the webinar with OmniSci, if you have any questions, please submit them on the chat box and we'll try to answer them during the Q&A portion of the webinar. Finally, last but not least, we'll spend a couple of minutes on the application process and show you how you can apply to an open position. So what is High Counselor? High Counselor is a unique platform specifically designed to help job seekers who are looking to connect with and get career coaching services from company insiders, or we call industry experts. High Counselor also provides one-on-one personalized training and an exclusive access to job opportunities, which is today's webinar primary goal. I'm one of the co-founder at High Counselor and will be hosting today's webinar. So if you're not familiar with YouTube channel, which I doubt, everyone must be familiar with YouTube, but let me set the ground rules for this webinar. To ask questions, you simply type them in the chat box in your YouTube control panel as illustrated here. You can simply put in your question here. We may get a lot of questions, but we'll try to answer as many as possible during the Q&A portion of the webinar. So without further delay, let's start with the introduction of Drew Ritter and Rachel Wang. Drew and Rachel, thank you so much for joining us today and taking the time with us to tell about your company and the great job opportunities that are currently available within your organization. So why don't we get started with your introduction, your background? That'll be great to know.
Sure. I'm happy to get started. I'm Rachel.
For sure.
Nice to meet everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I am a product manager here at OmniSci, supporting Immerse, which is our front-end visual analytics platform. I've been at OmniSci now for a year, and before that, I was working at Facebook, and then prior to that, I was doing analytical consulting.
My name is Drew. I am the front-end engineering manager here at OmniSci, which means that I focus on Immerse, just like Rachel. I've been at the company for about a year and a half. Before this, I worked at several other startups as an engineer and also on the support team. That's where I got started. I'm self-taught. I actually have an art history degree. So, you know, I really, I love talking to people with generalist backgrounds and an interest in the work that we do. And so I'm never going to be the one that makes you balance a red black tree. That's just not my thing.
Great. Thank you so much. So Drew and Rachel, let's get started with the overview of OmniSci. Why don't you tell us what OmniSci is, what's your vision, and what it actually feels to work at OmniSci?
Cool. So OmniSci is a GPU-powered SQL acceleration tool. It's a SQL-style database, columnar database. We also have a kind of front-end BI tool that does charting and visualizations. That's what we work on. We call that Immerse. Our major value prop is the ability to accelerate queries that would otherwise take huge amounts of time, days, weeks, to a couple seconds. I invite you to look at our demos page. The speed was shocking to me, coming from a big data background. I didn't actually believe it when I first saw it. And so, when you really think about it, what are we trying to do here? Well, we're trying to enable people to make sense of and derive value from kinds of data problems that in the past would have been inaccessible, either because of how long they took, how complicated the query plane would be, or just, maybe you have this soup of LiDAR data and you don't even know whether there's something useful in there. What OmniSci does is bring down that barrier to access so that you can run these very complicated queries really fast, get that data really fast, and use it to make better decisions. So, we talk a lot about democratizing data at scale, and making it, anyone with a gaming computer or, maybe even someday a laptop with a GPU in it can run our database and get instant results on the stuff that they're trying to do.
And I'm really curious to know about OmniSci's company culture, and that I can see from your dresses. So why don't you tell me how it feels to work at OmniSci?
Yeah, we actually have a holiday party this afternoon. So
But I dress up.
Okay.
we normally wear
This is what we normally wear,
we
but there's
normally
also
wear
a
this
party
anyway,
today.
but there's a little bit of festivities going around here. I think the culture is awesome. Everyone is really friendly, super smart. But actually, I think what surprises me about being here is the diversity that people bring. So Drew alluded to it. He has an art history background, but we have people on our team who are poets, who are artists, who have PhDs. The diversity is shocking and incredible to work with. And
people with computer science PhDs.
Yeah, exactly.
Everyone.
Everyone.
Yeah.
And the story of our founder, he's also incredibly diverse. He really came up with the idea for OmniSci at MIT. He's super technical, but he also has a really interesting past with studying Middle Eastern relations, and in general, I think something I'm really inspired by every day is just how wonderful and smart the people are, as well as just the problems that we're tackling are huge and challenging, and it's a competitive industry, and it just is really exciting to work here.
Yeah, I think we try very hard to think of employment as a two-way street. Like when somebody works at your company, they produce things, they add value to the company, but at the same time, we should be adding value to your career. You should be fulfilled and happy and interested in the work that you do. And we work really hard to make sure that we're providing that kind of environment, because if people feel safe to take intellectual risks and that we're all doing this together, we end up doing better work and working on cooler problems. And so I think it's that idea of support and just, we're all pulling together, and at the same time, we want you to do risky out there things.
That's perfect. That's great to know. So what is the work-life balance at OmniSci? You mentioned it's a very competitive industry. You have to be on your toes all the time. So what's the work-life balance?
Look, like this is this question comes up all the time, right? Like having worked at several startups, this has been posted before. It is a very typical startup culture. The thing that I say all the time is I want people to work a full day, an 8-9 hour day, normal day, and go home tired. But I'm not looking for a 12-hour day. We're not looking for, weekend work. Yeah, it's a startup. Sometimes in a blue moon, you have to work on the weekend. I think we've only done it once in a year and a half. Yeah. But, I think what's special about our team is people pull in the way that we need to together. Like during a release, sometimes we work later nights. We tend to all do it on video chat together, and it's fun, and we get pizza, and it's, we try and make it very familial in every case that we can. At the same time, it is a lot of hard work, and I do expect people to go home tired. Like you should leave at 6:30 or 7 and feel like that's it for you for the day. Yeah. But the minute we're staying till 10, 11, 12 and people can't have their own lives is the minute you start getting employees who are unhappy. And that's not what we want to do here. We want people to have a full life. We think a lot about self-care and, the kinds of burnout that can happen and how to watch for it and how to deal with it when it occurs. It's not if, but when. Yeah. And we all need to be supportive of each other when we hit those moments. And I think as long as you're always keeping a pulse and trying to calibrate to hit that optimal amount of output and work hours without burning people out, as long as we're always talking about it and we're always open about how we feel, you can, you apply a little bit more pressure, less pressure. Maybe sometimes people need a break. We just try and be really communicative and open about how we're doing. So what's the work-life balance? It's like a normal startup, but it's something we talk about a lot. We put a lot of thinking into, And in a lot of ways, I think that's really the best you can do. We think about it all the time. We talk about it all the time. We strive for the best work-life balance we can provide.
Totally. And I think it's, we're not hours driven. It's not about the number of FaceTime you have with us. It's really about, are you building the best products, delivering the most values to our customers in the time that you have? And so for some people, that won't take as much time as others. And we're okay with that. We really just care about having the best results for the team and for the company.
That's perfect. And I'm glad that you are very open about it. You didn't say, oh, we only work from 8 to 5. There are like no weekends, never. So that's amazing. And let me tell you, we have such a vibrant environment on our YouTube channel right now for this webinar. We have so many attendees and getting a lot of great comments here.
Great.
So it's going on amazing here. Okay?
Love it. Love that.
Awesome. So let's move forward. So as we'll be talking about software engineer front-end position primarily today, what are the growth opportunities available for young software engineers at OmniSci?
I love that question. So this is something I care about a huge amount. Obviously, I'm self-taught. I came up through the industry by people mentoring me and giving me opportunities when I wasn't necessarily qualified, taking risks on me. I think that's hugely important. So when we look at hiring a junior engineer or an engineer relatively early in their career, it's really important to us to make sure that we can provide growth opportunities. So what are those growth opportunities? Well, there are a couple of different things, right? We currently, like most startups, people wear a lot of different hats, and I try really hard to give people the work that they're interested in. If you want to take on more full stack work because that's something you've identified as a path you'd like to grow on, we're here to make that happen for you. You want to do more design work, we've facilitated that. We really want people to be able to take on the stuff they're interested in. At the same time, I think it's really important to be learning every day and to constantly be increasing your technical ability. And so we, through one-on-ones, through learning opportunities on the team, through Rachel and I working really directly with people when they spin up on taking on projects or they take on more responsibility, again, I want people to take intellectual risks while knowing that they're safe to do so. So a lot of the time we think about career development as a very personal thing. Like I meet with people on the team and work through what their goals are. And we try and come up with plans that are unique to each person. Again, it's something we really, really care about. And we're small enough now that we can really work in a more personalized way. I think going forward, there will be a greater opportunity to make lateral movements towards the backend team. We have other products that will come up. We want people to take a more active role in some of our marketing efforts. There's always work to do. And so again, it's transparency and communication. You tell us what your goals are and we will work as hard as we can to make those goals a reality for you.
Yeah, I completely echo what Drew just said. And from a product perspective, we are in the heavy growth phase of this product. There is more than enough work to do. And what that means is that every project is meaningful, right? Different products are at different life phases. At some companies, optimizing a button is really impactful. That, here you're going to create an entire flow. And that's just where we are in the product. We are working very closely hand in hand with design. There's just so much opportunity from a product growth perspective that naturally that will mean that there's so much opportunity for anyone that joins the team.
At the same time, there can be elegance in learning in any problem. And we encourage people, even when you have to take on, look, sometimes you got to change the drop shadow on a button. We've all been there, right? But if you don't walk away from that having learned something, it's a missed opportunity. And we work really hard to make sure that every project has real value for not only the company, but the people who are working on those projects. And we spend a lot of time attaching people on the team to projects based on their career goals, what they like and what they're good at, because we want people to be happy and always operating one step beyond their comfort zone. That's the goal.
Yeah.
That's perfect. That's great to know. Cool. So I'll take a quick pause here, and I can see a lot of questions here on our YouTube channel. So to all our attendees, you keep on adding your questions, and in the Q&A phase of this webinar, after 15 to 20 minutes, I'll take on all your questions. So your questions are not ignored. We have them in our bucket for Q&A section of this webinar.
Keep them coming.
Okay, so let's move ahead. So Drew and Rachel, it's very important for our millennial generation to know about future of a company. So where do you see OmniSci in next 5 to 10 years?
That's a great question. I think for a lot of startups, I don't know that we think 5 to 10 years
It's a long time
ahead.
out. Yeah.
Right?
Maybe like in 2 to 5 years from now.
Yeah, exactly. what I see it as is a company that will experience a lot of change. We expect to, right now, like it's really important for us to grow our product, right? Again, we're in the growth phase. And so ideally, I would say 2 years out, like our product will be completely transformed by the people who are working on it today.
Yeah.
And I think our goal ultimately is to completely disrupt this industry, right? It is a competitive, like analytics is a very saturated, very competitive industry, but our technology is different. And so if we're successful in 2 years, like a lot of people will know what the product is and they'll be using us. And that's what we're really striving for every day.
Yeah, I think, again, like we should be pushing the company forward and our careers forward every day as much as we can, which means that there's value on every single day, on every single month. And where we are in 2 years, if everyone pulls together, will be a good place. I think the truth is, this is an interesting piece of technology. It's bleeding edge. We had someone yesterday say, you guys are basically Excel in a pre-Excel world. There are new shifts in the way people think about data that are going to happen as a result of the product that we're working on. And so it's hard to say where we'll be in 2 years, but I believe we'll be successful. And so that's really what matters. I think that people who work here will be happy, our customers will be happy, and we'll have a product that empowers people to do great things in their jobs. So what more could you want?
Perfect. So we have a lot more questions to cover about company, but let's talk about software engineering front-end position at OmniSci, right? Because most of the questions that we are getting on our YouTube channel, they are also related to this job position. So Drew and Rachel, what's a typical day as a software engineer at OmniSci like?
Great question. So right off the bat, I'd say we follow what I like to refer to as agile light methodology, which means we do stand up and we do sprint planning every 2 weeks, but we don't do sizing poker or any of these other more aggressive meetings. We try and keep the day pretty meeting light. So generally what you would expect on the team is to go to stand up. You might have 1 or 2 other meetings in that day. Maybe they're meetings with design, meetings with me and Rachel, or meetings with the backend team related to architecture. And sometimes we talk to sales in the field as well. For the most part, people are collaborating on code. We have a lot of people who are remote, so we do a lot of video chatting and paired work. We're not a forced paired company, but I want each project to have at least 2 engineers on it. That means that there's a lot of collaboration. Most of your day is spent writing code. That's what I want engineers to do. That's what engineers are good at. I think a lot of it about writing a paper, for those of you who recently came from school. Writing a paper is a lot faster if you do an outline, collect your notes, and think about it. And the writing is the mechanics of typing words onto the page. And I want engineers to be in charge of making the best technical decisions they can and focusing on solving technical engineering problems. I don't want any engineer to ever have to worry, is the project I'm working on valuable to the company? And so Rachel and I spend a lot of time to make sure that we're very transparent. We tell everyone what we're doing, but I want to make sure that when we give project engineers, they're thought through and they can focus on doing the things that they like to do, not worrying about whether a button should be here or there, but worrying about how to build the most elegant solution to what that button needs to do.
Perfect. Thank you so much. The next question is, what is the typical career path of a software engineer at OmniSci? Is it a standard path where someone goes from software engineer to senior software engineer, maybe manager, or is there an opportunity to take your career in a different directions as well?
Great question. We are still a young company, and therefore we encourage people to tell us where they want to take their careers, and we'll try and make it happen. I in no way would be weirded out if somebody said they wanted to be on the field team or wanted to move into product. We've had people move into design that were on the engineering team. That being said, we do have a very flat hierarchy here. We don't have senior engineers right now. We just have engineers. Some of them have 30 years of experience, some of them have 1, and we all work together. We also have space for kind of lead track. We've used that at times. I was previously the front end lead, and we also do have a manager track, though I don't see engineers as graduating to managers being part of the engineering track. It's very important to me to have a management track, which is lead, manager, that kind of more administrative roles, and an IC track. Some people don't want to be managers, they want to be principal engineers, and we should facilitate that career. So to me, again, it's, we're a young company and we're here to make sure that we do right by our employees so they do the best work they can. So I would want to hear what your career intentions are. We don't have any other managers on the front end team but me. Someday we probably will as we grow as a company, but just like a lot of startups, a lot of the roles that might exist someday probably won't until somebody wants to do that job. And at which point we'll invent that role. Very standard startup, small company stuff.
We're very small.
We're small and scrappy still.
I report to a VP of product who reports to the CEO. We don't have that many layers. And, I think it's important that people can talk to the VP of engineering, right? That ICs can do that and feel comfortable doing that. So we prefer to have a more flat organization.
Now that totally makes sense. And that's the path of success, actually, right? So let's get into fun question now. And I'm sure like most of the people would be waiting for this question. So what's the salary range of a software engineer that you offer at OmniSci? Also, do you offer any other perks and benefits?
So I don't actually want to give a salary range at all. And I'll say that because what I can say is our salary is very competitive. Our comp is extremely competitive with the industry. I believe that people's compensation is a blend. Some people want equity, some people want money, some people want other kinds of perks. Everybody's different. It's an ongoing conversation, but we pay fairly for the value that you bring. In my experience, I've worked at a lot of different companies. I think that we are very, very fair on compensation. Now, in terms of other perks, we do have some, though I would say that we generally tend to shy a little bit away from perks. We do have a wellness benefit. We have food. We have lunch during the week. We have great snacks. We have beer and stuff in the office. We have happy hours. We do offsites and dinners and kind of the standard team building style activities, but we don't have a huge employee discount program. We don't.
There's actually
there's
some.
There's
a little bit.
That's changed a little bit.
Yeah.
But we're experimenting with what perks we think are right, what level of vacation is right. But again, like we just want to work together to figure out what that looks like. Yeah. Some of our remote people, because of the flexibility they have in their lifestyle, have a different blend of perks than the people who are in the office. Some people with kids have a different work style. Maybe they want to work from home more than people in the office. Like we have people with huge commutes, they tend to work at home more. So it really depends on who you are. And again, we're output driven. So like we want people to be able to live the lifestyles that they want. Yeah. And I think that fair compensation is the best way to get there.
Yeah, I fully agree. And having worked at a company, Facebook, with a lot of perks right before this, actually, I would say that the perks here are comfortable. Mm-hmm. Like we live very comfortably. This office is beautiful to work in.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Totally beautiful.
And
office.
It is.
This is the worst conference room in the whole office, by the way. It's the quietest one. But yeah, don't let the lack of windows fool you. And we do have windows in the office.
We have a beautiful office. It's really comfortable. Like we have the best machines. We have the best, the tech is great. So I think everything that facilitates an amazing work life is here.
And so that's an interesting point because one of the major perks is your access to technology. Most of us work on workstations with multiple graphics cards, very powerful processors, huge amounts of RAM. Yeah. We spend most of our employee perk cost on hardware. And so we do encourage people to ask for the hardware they want, the monitors they want. We're pretty happy to buy people the machines that they want. I have 2 weird custom gaming desktops under my desk full of graphics cards because that's what I need to do my job. And if you're a hardware inclined person, when I walked into this office and saw that every computer was full of LEDs and like dragon screen printed on the side, I'm like, yeah, that's like, I love that. I love putting together computers. This is like, I love being at it's a remarkable opportunity in the world of cloudification to work at a company with as close a relationship with hardware as we do. I consider that a really dramatic perk. I get access to hardware before anybody else. I get to use the nicest stuff and I use it for my job. It's not a toy. Like I actually put my computer to use. And that's a great perk for me as a hardware person.
It's a huge perk. Yeah. And so I would say like, as a startup, it's actually important to be somewhere where we're fairly frugal with our money, right? Yeah. Like we're spending on income and compensation, like that's important. On the general work environment, that's important. And we still get company retreats and things that are nice. Totally. So I think we're well compensated.
Yeah.
I think these are great benefits. And when you mention about flexibility to work, that is,
Yeah.
I think, the biggest perk.
Yep.
And you did not mention about flexibility to whatever you can wear, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's the
Absolutely. I
biggest
mean,
perk.
it's where we try really, I mean, look,
Yeah.
like we want people to be themselves. We want people to bring
Mhm.
themselves to the office like the true startup model. I don't want you to give your life to this company, but I want you to put some of yourself into it. We're building something together. You should put your personality into the thing that we're building. You shouldn't feel that if you don't feel safe to do that, how are you going to feel safe taking intellectual risks? If you don't
Mhm.
feel safe taking clothing risks, you know what I mean? That kind
Yes.
of trust goes a long way.
Yeah. And I really appreciate it. I really appreciate this culture and great to know about it. So to all our attendees, I would highly, highly recommend OmniSci as a great workplace.
So would I.
Yeah.
Cool. So let's move ahead. So let's talk about this specific position, software engineer front end. So what's the interview process for a software engineering position at OmniSci? Like how many interview rounds are there? Is it all technical or are there behavioral rounds as well? What's your expectations?
So it's a couple rounds. It really depends on the person. Again, we tend to we do one round of tech screen fairly early on. We reserve the right to do more rounds of tech screen if people want to dig deeper into a certain skill set. The rest of the interviews are, a couple that are kind of culture. There's a panel interview. Again, like we try very hard to not bring people into the process that we don't think would be a really good fit. And we want the whole team generally to talk to them. I think a lot of the time, technical aptitude is really important, but attitude is often more important. And if you're someone with a good attitude that loves to learn, I'm confident you can learn JavaScript. Like if you don't know JavaScript, you know Python. If you're someone who can't learn another language, I would be very surprised. So, I think the reality is, of course, the interview is technical. This is a hyper technical company. We work on GPU accelerated SQL. It's very technical. That being said, I don't think that technicality is best measured with a take-home project. I want to hear what you know how to talk about. I want to hear what you're excited about. I want to hear if you know about why using a GPU for something like SQL querying is more efficient than a CPU. I want to know if you know something about distributed processing, about parallel work. Like, I don't really care what your expertise in a particular tool is. I care about your desire to learn tools. So a lot of the time we'll end up talking about architecture. We'll talk about a broader technical question. I encourage people to tell me about what they're interested in. I often ask, tell me about a project that didn't go so well and what you'd do if you could go back and do it again. That's a technical question, but it's also a behavioral question. So, again, well-rounded people that make well-rounded teammates and build a well-rounded culture. Do you need to be technical to work here? Absolutely, it's a very complicated product. But I would say more than do you have to be technical, the question is, do you want to be technical? Because if you really want to work at a highly technical company, but aren't today, but you really want to learn it, you can learn it. But this isn't a job for someone who doesn't have a deep passion for electronics, for hardware, for bleeding edge technology, for optimization and computation. Like there are some more computer sciencey things that we do here. And so, it's where your interests lie. That's what we test for. Very verbose answer to your question. But in general, we just want to talk to people who are really excited about whatever they're excited in and are technical and interested in learning technical topics.
Perfect. So Drew and Rachel, what happens most of the time that candidates are capable for a particular job, right? But they're not aware about what it's going to be in the interview, what topics do I need to study? And I hate when such candidates lose really great job opportunities. So it's always good to best inform candidates or applicants about what is expected at the interview. So what topics would you recommend our attendees to maybe brush up before the interview or before the job application so that they're well prepared for the interview and they present best of themselves?
I would have a general idea of basic computer hardware technology. I would know the difference between a CPU and a GPU. You should definitely have gone to our website. I will ask if you've seen the demos. I really want that answer to be yes. So that's a secret. If the answer is no, that's going to be tough for you. So please, in general, when you're interviewing with companies, it's a good idea to go to their website first. So I'm sure you know that, but Turns out some people don't. I expect a firm technical knowledge in JavaScript, though not necessarily specific JavaScript tools. But at the very least, I'd really like you to know the benefits of a dynamic language versus a static language, the pros and cons on each side. I might ask you to compare two languages. You know, like if you don't know JavaScript, but you know Python and Ruby, I'd really like to know what you like from each one. I've asked people if you could construct a programming language of your favorite features from other languages, what would that be? At the same time, if you're not a JavaScript person and you want to talk to me about all the awesome Python projects you've written, I speak Python. I'm very happy to talk about that. I would bring expertise in whatever you happen to be an expert in and be prepared to talk about it in a technical way. You might find that a lot of our interviews share some knowledge in that space and are very well positioned to have a very technical conversation with you about whatever you want to talk about. But I want people to be excited, and I'm not going to knock you if you don't know React. If you've never heard of React, I would find that surprising. If you've never written React, tell me what you're excited about coming to a component-based toolkit from something like Angular or Backbone. Let's talk about different strategies. Let's talk about what tools you use in your own projects. You know, if I said, what tool do you use in your personal project, and you say, I've never done a personal project, that says a lot about how much you want to learn, you know? So again, like, it's very hard for me to say these are things you have to brush up on. Come with the firmest amount of technical expertise in whatever you've chosen to be an expert in, talk about that confidently, assertively, and walk out of that room with me thinking that I learned something from you. Couldn't ask for anything more than that.
That's perfect. And I think that's a very, very good advice. So Rachel and Drew, what type of skills or previous projects a candidate can highlight to stand out for this position? Anything specific that comes to your mind from your previous interviews? Any candidate that mentioned something amazing and you're like, I want this guy, right? That happens sometimes.
Yeah,
They want
I
to.
think, yeah, well, I would say like part of our team being so small is like we expect people to have a diverse set of experiences. We're not looking for a cookie cutter type. And so someone, you know, might be a part-time designer on the side, and they may have designed like entire websites, and they can also be a developer at the same time, while someone else might have deep back-end knowledge. And so I think for us, it's less about a specific type of project and more that you've shown a deep interest in something.
That being said, you come at me with a project that uses a GPU render pipeline. You come at me with a project that involves distributed systems, electrical engineering, big data analytics at scale, building distributed systems at scale. Any of those things are very useful experiences. Like, tell me about the distributed system you built that didn't work right, that no one could maintain, and what you would do better. Like, that's, you know, a lot of the time I just want to hear about interesting things that you've worked on, and I want to hear the passion in your voice for that project. But look, if you have GIS experience or experience doing geospatial, geotemporal analytics, you have experience with CUDA, if you know C++, that would be awesome. Tell me about it. But by no means, like, again, tell me about the thing. I always ask, tell me about the project you're most proud of, and tell me about the project you're least proud of. And I want you to speak passionately and technically about those two projects. What are they? Yeah, if you tell me that you're an expert on CUDA, that's interesting to me, but I can't say that's more interesting than saying what one of our candidates said, which was he continuously is working and maintaining an app that does carpool management for his children's elementary school, and live books you into cars based on where you're going and what time you're getting picked up, and all the parents have the app and they look at what slot they're supposed to go to, what time, and he's like built this for the elementary school. Like, that's awesome. We hired that guy. But amazing. Is that a project I would have read off the top of my head as something I'm interested in? Probably not, no.
Yeah.
But it turned out I was when he talked about it.
Yeah, and we definitely we're an analytics company. So if you have a passion for data analytics, data science, machine learning.
Sounds great.
Those are all topics we're excited to talk about.
Perfect. That's good to know for sure. Okay, so let's jump into third phase of this webinar, which is Q&A from our attendees. Okay.
Ready.
So be ready for very spontaneous questions. Okay. And trust me, I have a long list of questions.
Okay.
You'll be surprised to see. So we have first question from Stephen Lee. Stephen says, so this question is for you, Drew. Drew, what were some of the steps you took to become a front-end engineer? What did your journey look like from coding, studying to landing your job at OmniSci?
It's a great question. Again, I'm self-taught. I started in high school, a little bit of middle school, just doing my own projects. I'm actually a backend engineer. I'm not the strongest front-end engineer. I came from a backend world. I learned Java first. I spent a while as a Python engineer. Honestly, I had a real, let's say, physical aversion to writing JavaScript in a previous job. I hated it. I didn't understand it. It made me really unhappy. I said to my boss, I'm a full stack engineer, but I don't want to write JavaScript anymore. He said, that means you have to only write JavaScript. Because if you're that scared, it means that you don't know enough and you need to get better. So for me, becoming a front-end engineer was identifying that I didn't know how to do it and that probably wasn't a good thing. Like I wanted to be able to build a website for a friend if they wanted that. So I said, I'm going to take a front-end engineering job, a pure front-end engineering job, and I'm going to work my ass off and learn whatever tooling they use. I had done some React, I had done some JavaScript, but the truth is I wanted to do something really different and I wanted to work really, really hard. That's how I became a front-end engineer. And that's how I became a blank that I think work really hard and be really interested in it is basically the formula for getting good at stuff. And I dreamt of being an engineer from my earliest possible memories. It's always what I wanted to do. And I always was, look, I was told that if you weren't a physicist, you couldn't be an engineer. So I became an art historian instead. Turns out that's not true. And if you're passionate about something and you work really hard and you really care about it, you can do whatever you want to do. So you want to be a front engineer? Go look at a React tutorial and teach yourself how to be a front-end engineer. If you don't like it, it means it's probably not right for you. Go learn a different language. There's a million languages out there. Pick the one you like the most. There's something for everyone in this great industry of ours.
Sure, great. So next question we have is from Anne-Marie Rousseau. Anne asks, this position asks for 2 years of work experience, but our graduates have less than 1 year. Can you speak to that? So I think some of the candidates on this webinar, they come from boot camps, right? And they have about 1 year of experience. So does that work or is it strict 2 years of requirement?
Nothing strict. What I would say is the following. One, I want to talk to you and we'll figure out if you have enough experience. That's our job, not yours. I highly encourage people to apply and let us figure out whether you're right for the job. Yep. At the same time, you can go to a boot camp and have more than a year of experience. It just might not be engineering experience. I would really prefer to hire people who have had a job before. I think it's really hard to learn how to be an engineer while you're also learning how to be employed. So my preference is always that your learning how to be employed came from a different role. I'm very happy to teach you how to be an engineer if you understand how to be a respectful professional in a workplace. It's very easy to learn. So no, I'm never going to knock someone for not having enough experience, but you will have to work harder. As somebody who went into an engineering job with no engineering experience in one of my previous roles, it is harder. It's not impossible, but you have to really want to do it. And so that interview is going to be a lot more about us figuring out whether you're committed to the point that you're going to put that much work in. If you're going to put work in, you can learn it. So I'm never going to knock someone. I'm a huge supporter of boot camps. There were times in my past where I sent other people to boot camps. My partner went to a boot camp. We've hired many people for boot camps. I am never going to knock a boot camp grad. Again, I'm self-taught. I have an art history degree. I don't care where you come from. All I care is that you're passionate about this work. It's a trade. Be passionate about the trade. Want to put some amount of your life into it to build your expertise. Doesn't have to be forever, but I want you to want to be an engineer and to love the practice of engineering day after day.
Perfect. So I think that's a good news for a lot of people here on the webinar. Okay, so the next question is from Zaid Pasha. Zaid says, could you elaborate on mentorship at the company and both of your favorite things about mentoring?
We do mentorship. I mean, it's hard to elaborate. I try very hard to make sure that people are paired on projects with someone that has something to teach them. I also am trying to build a more formal mentorship program, but that is in the early stages where you'd be paired with someone on a different team. Yeah. Rachel and I also, try and do mentorship as much as we can. I've been around for a while. There are people on the team who know a lot more than me, but I think that, as Rachel's pointed out a lot of times, everyone on the team has something to teach someone else. So there could be mentorship everywhere. Every working relationship should have mentorship in both directions. What's my favorite thing about mentorship? I just love making people better at their job. Like I love when you're working with someone and you show them something and they're like, oh my God, like I can't believe I didn't know that. That makes so much sense. Or even just, hey, I didn't even think of having that perspective. That's really cool. Like if you work somewhere where that company is not making the same kind of investment in you as you are in that company, there's something wrong. So we try very hard to equal the investment people bring to the table through mentorship. And I mean, it's hard to elaborate more than that. It's something we're very serious about that we both really care about. Yeah. And again, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the people that mentored me. So I know how much it counts.
Yeah. And I would add 2 more points to that. One is, everyone here is really friendly. So if you want to learn about a different topic, like, part of our product is open source. And so if you want to learn about, what it means to open source a product, like we have tons of people who love to talk about that, right? Something we actually do is we have lightning talks at this company. So people actually come and just talk about various topics that they're really interested in. And so I think that in general, like, mentorship also is a two-way street. Like if you want mentorship, sometimes you have to find it out yourself. And what I like about this company is that people are so open to talking to you and sharing their expertise, which is great.
And finding it yourself really means put up your hand. Like I'll find you a mentor, but you have to tell your manager that you really want that experience. Some people don't really want that, and everyone should be able to choose. Yeah. So you want to be mentored? In our weekly one-on-one, please tell me what you're looking for and we will find a pairing for you.
Right. And I think in terms of my favorite thing about mentorship, it's the opportunity to get to know yourself better.
You only know something when you're able to teach it.
Yeah.
If you can't teach it, you don't know it.
Yeah. And it's also just a really magical experience when you have realized that you've up-leveled yourself.
Agreed.
And you become a better leader as well, right? When you mentor someone. So that's again a benefit. Cool. We have a next question from Aaron Goddard. Aaron says, has your team begun to employ React hooks?
Yes. Good. Love it. Wow. So let me just put on my other hat. Yeah, we have actually. Now, look, obviously it's a relatively new API. We're trying to be a little careful, but yes, we have started to implement React hooks. We haven't quite, we actually had an argument the other day as to whether we're going to enforce the removal of the old lifecycle methods like Component did bound. I don't think we're quite there. I think it's fine to still use some of those lifecycle methods, but we are converting to the new React APIs as they become available. Hooks for us is important, but we're spending a lot of time right now converting to TypeScript. In my opinion, having typing given that we're a database, SQL databases are heavily typed. Like your column type is really important. So if we can maintain strict typing end to end, a lot of the classes of errors we have that happen when we have rounding, doubles to integers, doubles that actually represent geographic points, just these type mismatches, it's actually a huge problem for us. So having strict typing all the way through the Redux layer is proving to be a higher value push than moving to React hooks. I think that's something we're just going to do naturally as the product evolves versus TypeScript where we're like, let's just do this now, because we're already seeing that the minute we can type across the Redux layer, a lot of errors just disappear. I know that for some of you out in the deeper entrenched dynamic JavaScript land, that might be sad for you, but look, you pick a tool based on the job you want to solve. And unfortunately, a lot of our job has type issues. So TypeScript was a high value project for us.
Great, perfect. So the next question is from Anne Marie. Anne asks, for front-end roles, do you mainly look for people with a design or product background?
No.
No.
Again, I'm a back-end engineer.
But many back-end.
I would like you to be interested in UX. Like, don't be like, I want everything to be unstyled Arial at 12-point font. Like, that's going to be tough. You should have an interest in what user experience is and how to make a good one. But no, again, you can learn that. Like, if you come with technical experience or job experience or the desire to learn, you can learn whatever. But yeah, this is, you shouldn't go for a front-end engineering role if you don't care at all how stuff looks. You're more of a back-end engineer in that case. and there's room for you too. Trust me, there's room for people like me.
Cool.
But yeah,
You
no.
have an artist eye.
Yeah, but I'm not I'm not a designer or UX engineer,
Right.
or I don't really know
You're
CSS.
not CSS.
I can write JavaScript perfectly fine, but I'm not a CSS person. And if you are, that's awesome. If you're not, I don't think you're going to be excluded. No, again, everybody's different. And if you don't know CSS, but you have a PhD in graphical computation, why am I going to knock you for that? Not saying that's required, but again, brings whatever you bring to the table, that's what we care about. If you have gaps in your knowledge, we will help you plug those gaps very quickly.
Yeah. People pick up CSS all the time.
Yep.
So you just have to be dedicated with good amount of skills, and everything will be taken care.
Dedicated
Right?
and communicative, because you have to be confident and honest enough to let us know what you don't know.
Yeah.
Now, that's often a big problem in the industry, as you know. People sometimes don't feel confident saying what they don't know. They're worried it will reflect poorly on them. And there's a tendency to indicate that you know a little bit more than you do at all times.
Yeah.
Here, we try very hard to have people be completely honest about what they do and don't know. Let's just work on stuff together. If you don't know it, maybe that person does. But let's never waste time being worried that our lack of knowledge will be reflected poorly on us. Ask questions, be honest, and if you need help on something, someone will help you.
Yeah.
We help each other all the time.
That's true. Humility is one of our core values.
Perfect. Great. So our next question is from Jocelyn Baduria. Jocelyn says, do you accept interns?
We do not currently have an engineering internship program. There have been internship programs on the community team in the past. I don't know what our plans are for doing interns in the future. I also would suggest that I'm not quite sure this is the best placement for an internship. I really think our code base takes around 3 months to learn at minimum, and that's the end of your internship. So it's kind of difficult from that perspective. That being said, I would like to say that if you are an intern or somebody who's still in school and you'd like to talk to an engineer in the Valley about career advice and things you might want to look at, I think that we're always happy to do that. But I am not certain, again, it's a two-way street, and I'm not certain that at today, we would be setting interns up for the most success. And interns, honestly, that's more about what we can do for you, right? Like interns aren't expected to produce a huge amount. If I don't feel that I can really do something positive for your career, it's not worth it. In the future, we would like to have interns. Absolutely. But we have to make a program, make sure you're successful and you walk away better. Not like, oh my God, I was ignored we've all had internships where like nobody talks to you for 3 months. I will never bring in an intern to that world.
That makes sense, definitely. Cool. So the next question is from Naimeka Naveke. Naimeka says, is this position open to international applicants? And I know we have discussed it offline, but I would love to hear it again from you.
Yes, we are happy to hire any extremely great candidate, regardless of your nationality or where you currently live. So come talk to us.
And I think OmniSci also sponsor visa, H-1B visas, right?
Yes.
Okay, so to all international candidates, you can definitely apply for this position.
Yes, please.
Okay. Next question is from Karin Chen. Karin says, do you expect hardware knowledge for front-end roles? Would you expect your front-end engineers to work with hardware team?
Well, let me put it this way. If you're not interested enough in hardware to go read the Wikipedia article on GPUs, this isn't a good place for you to work. Do you need to know a lot more than that? Probably not. Do you need to have interest in hardware? Yes, definitely. Do you need to be an electrical engineer? No. But if you're not excited by the fact that we are working so close to bleeding edge hardware, I would worry that you wouldn't be excited about what we do, because so much of what we do is hardware driven. Do we expect front-end engineers to do hardware engineering? No, we don't do hardware engineering. We use NVIDIA hardware. So that's not even something that we have to worry about. Do you need to know C++? Absolutely not. But do you need the intellectual curiosity to go and figure out why us running on GPUs is important? Yeah, you do.
Or figuring out an issue with a front-end error or back-end error.
Yeah, but at the very least, like, if you're not willing to start unwrapping the puzzle of why GPU, you might not be interested in what we do. Not that you're not a good enough engineer, but I want you to really be interested in what we're doing. There's an unlimited number of companies. Go work someplace you're passionate. So like, do I expect hardware knowledge? No, but I do expect you to have interest because that's what we do here.
And this is very similar to actually tech consulting roles where you don't have to actually code, but you should love technology, right? To implement it.
Yeah,
It's exactly
love
the
what you
same
do.
thing.
Love what you do.
Yeah.
Our software runs on GPUs, so
Mhm.
you probably should have some interest in GPUs.
Yeah.
That's
Great. So we have next question from Darren Joshua. And Darren says, do you provide relocation assistance?
it's on a case-by-case basis. We have, but I can't say that we always will. It's not part of the standard hiring package, but we have done it, and I'd be happy to engage in that conversation. To me, again, let's hire the best people we can and figure out what it's going to take. We also have a lot of remote people on our team. We're about 50% remote. So, maybe that's something that we could talk about. It has happened, but it's not a guarantee.
Good. And there's no specific preference to hire only people from Bay Area, right?
No.
Just I'm curious about. Okay, cool.
I think that it is better to work local at whatever job you choose, but it depends on who you are. What I tell people a lot is the importance of being local decreases with your experience. If you're in your first couple of years, you probably want to try and work in an office because you will accelerate your career more if you're working around other people. If you have 20 years of experience, I can't guarantee you being in the office is going to make you a better engineer. So who cares? But it would be hard for me to hire a one-year engineer remote because I just don't think we would be able to really do right by you in the way that you deserve at that early point in your career.
And that's also not good from learning perspective of the candidate as well, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Good to learn in person as much as possible. And we have a lot of questions pending, and we just have 8 minutes more for this webinar. So I'll take 1 or 2 more questions, and then we'll have to stop there and talk about application process. The
Yeah, by the way, you can ask us as many questions as you want if you apply. Then you get to talk to us in real life.
You can get on the phone with us.
Great. Okay. So the next question here is from Hugo Meza. Hugo says, what do you like or dislike about development process at OmniSci?
I like everything about it because I came up with it. No, I'm just kidding. So we work really hard right now to make sure that the code we're writing satisfies our customers. However, I really think that there are multiple customers. One are the people who pay us. Two are the engineers who are going to have to maintain that code 2 years from now. And if you're not also writing for that customer, you're doing a bad job. So right now, my favorite thing about the way we do development is we're trying to write stuff that's clear, well-tested, well-documented, no tricks. Lines are free. Like I want the best way to write code is with a focus on removing it in 3 years, because that's what's going to happen. No one's going to write React anymore. We're all going to have to write something else. How do you make your code as easy as possible to change to whatever it needs to be in the future? You can't future-proof stuff in any other way. My favorite thing is that we think of that. We think about what is the experience of the next person who picks this up. And that's not the case in every job. And I think it makes you a much more empathetic engineer towards our primary paying customers as well. If you're really thinking about the user experience at the code level, what is it like to read this code base for people? That will naturally percolate all the way up through all the product that you do. So that would be my favorite thing.
Do you have a least favorite?
We need to write more tests. I think that there is a tendency in the industry for engineers to not write tests, and I want everyone to always write tests on every PR. More tests is a good thing. More tests, please. Always more tests. I'm pushing on that very hard.
I would say my favorite part is the ownership piece. So more and more, we're starting to see people really own parts of the code base. And so when things break, they're right on it, even before the issues are reported. So I love that, and I love people taking pride in their work.
We feel that you own. If that line gets blamed to you, you own it forever. Doesn't matter if you've moved on to other projects. You should jump in and help the people who are in that part of the code base.
Yeah. Least favorite part, I think it's just that there's so much that we want to do. And
Yeah.
there's so little time.
I
So
wish we did 3 times as much. If there was 3 times as much time,
yeah, I
I
just
would
want
like
more.
our development process
Yeah.
more. Does that count? Is that a valid answer?
That's the product answer,
we
right?
would like to
Just-
do dramatically more with way less time. That's what I would like.
That's the product
Yeah.
answer.
But
Yeah.
that's always the case, right? Welcome to startups.
Mhm. That's perfect. Cool. So let's take last question from this webinar. And this question is from Jennifer Ma. And I think we have covered a lot of details about this question, but I'd like to take it again because we have similar question from other attendees as well. What qualifications or requirements on the job posting do you put the most emphasis on? And I think this question is regarding that candidates want to prepare their resume accordingly. They don't want to lose out on those points. So at the last, if we can cover that most important thing, that'll be great. Final tip for all the attendees. There's a huge silence.
Very hard for me to answer. I don't, because it's very hard for me to answer because I don't want to give you bad advice. I don't think box checking on requirements is a good idea. I never have, I never will. I think that if you apply to startups, you should trust that the startup recruiting engine will determine whether you are a good candidate or not. And if we won't be able to see that unless you have a keyword on your resume, we're doing a very bad job.
Yeah.
So, I don't, look, at the same time, I want people to demonstrate that they have worked on technical projects that have been successful, that they were really passionate about. I would rather your resume details the way you did your work and the nature of the projects you worked on than be a long list of skills. Because I'll tell you this, if I look at your long list of skills and there's something that stands out as probably not 100% accurate, that's what I'm asking about.
Yeah.
And a lot of times padding your resume, especially in my experience, like, man, let me tell you about that interview I walked in where they asked me Java questions. Java shouldn't have been on my resume. It was misleading and I got called on it. So like your resume should represent what you bring to the table. Don't pad it to try and get through filters. We don't do that here. There are some companies that do, but I don't know how those mechanisms work because that's not how we do resume screening. So
we do it humanly, like manually. So it's not like we're screening for a particular word.
Yeah.
It's
I never want to be the university that only looks at test scores. That's wrong.
Yeah.
I just don't agree with that at all. It's about who you are, what you bring to the table. Are you hungry? Do you like our industry? Do you like the people that work here? Are you respectful, collaborative? Do you really care about supporting your teammates? Do you feel that pulling for a family is the most important thing? That's what I'm looking for. Like it's hard to put cultural checkboxes on your resume, but in a lot of ways, the most important thing with small startups is building and preserving the culture. So, you might check some boxes and not others on the technical aspect. You might be the best engineer in the world and impossible to collaborate with. It's hard to say what intersections are going to weed you out. I would just bring your A game.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how to cheat the system because we don't have a firm system. We hire people based on who they are.
Yeah. But I think 2 things ring true from what Drew said. 1, be yourself, be honest with us. And 2, like write about the things you actually did, right? Because it's easy to say, well, there's one small project that vaguely resembles something GPU. That's not going to be meaningful to us if you've left the biggest project that you've worked on off your resume. Yeah. So really write about the stuff that you're the most proud of.
And if you put x86 assembly on your resume because you did one project in university one time in it, I'm going to ask about it. So make sure that you have something to say, because if what you say is, oh, I did that in a class one time, now I kind of am starting to wonder how honest your resume is. So represent who you are, what you're excited about, what you know. Don't try and fool the system because employers will see it. That will be far more noticed than the fact that you missed one keyword. That's just my personal advice in the matter. That's applied to many jobs.
Yes, and that's, I think, the best advice. Put what you actually know and be genuine about it, right? And that'll good. So thank you so much, Drew and Rachel, for your time, for sharing about OmniSci, this job position, your wonderful experiences. And let me tell you, we have 100% retention rate in this webinar. I've not seen the number going down by after 60 minutes. It's been 60 minutes already.
Amazing.
Well,
right?
Thank you so much for setting this up. Thank you, everyone who's come to listen to us talk. I can't see you, so I don't know if you enjoyed it, but I hope that you did. please
Definitely.
apply. We're really interested in talking to you, and go look at our demos and go see 32 billion rows filtering instantly. And if you've ever used a SQL product, prepare to be amazed.
It's amazing. Yeah.
Cool. So let's talk about the most important part of this webinar, how to apply for this job position. That is very, very important. Okay, so please allow me to share my screen once again. Okay. Can you see my screen? Drew and Rachel can confirm. Okay, perfect.
Yes.
So to apply to
Very
this position,
straightforward.
okay. So to apply to this job position, as we are not hiring in a very traditional way where you just go to Indeed and apply for a job position there, you have to go to highcounselor.com/OmniSci, OMNISCI, and there you have to submit your resume and you have to answer 2 questions over there. Why are you applying for this job? And what makes you qualify beyond what's on your resume? These are not mandatory questions over there, but I would highly, highly recommend you to answer this question, be as genuine as possible, and definitely submit your resume. And we'll get back to you as soon as possible. We are on the immediate hiring for this particular position, so you won't have to wait for months and months just to hear back on the result. Okay, and we'll get back to you for sure.
We will get back to you quickly. We are very excited to talk about our company and what we do and what you're excited about. And good luck out there, whether it's with us or with anybody else. I know the job market's hard. Applying for jobs is hard. It's intimidating, but be genuine, be excited, be passionate, and good things will happen.
Yeah.
Perfect. Cool. So we're going to wrap up this event now. I hope you benefited from attending this webinar. We're going to send you a survey in the next few minutes. So please take a moment to fill it out and let us know what you thought of today's webinar. Also, we'll send you an email with the instructions to apply for this job. So if you have missed anything in the last slide, you'll get a detailed email with the link and everything so that you can go answer those 2 questions, submit your resume, and we'll get back to you. That's it for today. Thank you again for attending and hope we'll see you on our next webinar. A big thanks to our guest speaker, Rachel and Drew. It's great talking to you. You guys have a wonderful day ahead.
Thanks so much.
Thank you guys. Bye.
Bye. See you, everyone.